The church bell rang, my mobile phone agreed, and so I think it's time to launch this edition of our webinars. Of course, I checked the registrations, and many of you or I haven't seen before, but have seen me before. And but let's say in the series of our webinars that you, of course, can check on our website, this is a special webinar in the sense that we're not talking about our experiences, or we're not trying to explain how AI works, but rather I want to share a bit what we think about what the future will be, especially for knowledge institutions and libraries, and also some of the visions that of things that may happen in the future with AI, of course, in our field. And so I'm not going to share any live products that we have experience with, but I'm sharing images, prototypes, and mock-ups to exemplify and to show you what we think, at least in parts, will be the future. It is also a webinar that cannot dive into any topic in depth. So by necessity, it's a bit superficial because we have to touch so many topics. However, you can ask questions in the chat, and if there's time at the end, I'll try to answer them. You can also answer the questionnaire at the end of the webinar, which will automatically open when I finish the webinar. It's just 3 questions and a field where you can share your thoughts. So these are the 2 best ways to share your feedback with me. And of course, you can always write an email, link me on LinkedIn, and get in touch. As you know, we love to discuss AI, and we love to know what you think and where you, especially when you disagree with us. Okay, let's start with this presentation. By the way, people who know me know that I've a weakness for images in my presentation. So this is an image that combines the future and an art that is 3,000 years old, the Minoan art. And it's a brilliant image on how far the technology developed in the last 2 years only, because 2 years ago, AI images weren't able to create texts. And now you see here in the back, you see knowledge is the sea. The more you dive, the more you discover. So that's not something I prompted. That is something the AI came up with and wrote it there. So, and also kind of the mixture of future and the 3,000-year-old style. This is how far we have come in just 2 years. And it's kind of an example of the speed in which AI is developing. All right, so let's dive right into it. Many of you know me. I'm a lawyer by training. I'm an art historian by training, an IT guy by accident, and an lecturer by love. I love to talk about AI. I love to explain. So I'm visiting panels regularly and give lectures also outside these webinars. So this is what I really love to do. And of course, I found it asking. But that's of minor importance. So the agenda. This webinar has 3, say, parts. The first part is I'm looking for the starting point by explaining what the status is, let's say, in AI and in discovery. Then I will a bit discuss on what to do with the status. And then in the end, I'll show you 2 ideas of what the future might look like. So this will be the look into the crystal ball. All right, let's start with the status. As you know, Google has included the AI overview in its results, and I think this is super important because we are mostly concerned with what the users expect from the libraries, be it a university library, a public library, or an archive, or even a museum. I think we need to take into account what the users are expecting from us, because I think very quickly, if we don't at least follow the user expectations to a certain extent, will become irrelevant. So the first thing I think is to look at the user expectations. And of course, they are formed by the tools they use every day, be it Google, be it ChatGPT, be it Amazon, be it TikTok. This is the world in which at least the younger generation lives in. So this is the future. Google being the most important of the lot, even though 2 years ago people said Google is dead because the AI train left without them, but they came back very quickly. And one example, it's not only Gemini and their tool, the LLM, but also the AI overview that they place in the Google search overview. I think so on the right, you'll see a screenshot of Google, and I think it's very interesting. This result list that Google grew with and became world dominant is just at the very bottom of the page. So on the top of the page, there's the AI overview. Then come some videos, which my film heart likes, but it's also a change from the previous setup of Google. And then only come the results list. And then to back that up with some numbers, by now, if the AI overview is shown, only 61% of the people, the usage of the search results drops by up to 61%. And that's an older number from the beginning of this year. I assume it's even bigger right now. Funny enough, Google didn't lose income through AI. It gained income because with the AI overview, people stay longer on their website. So this is definitely where actually the user expectation of today is. That said, we also see, as somebody who operates chatbots in library environments, that old habits die hard. So if you're used to workflows on how to search literature or sources for your master degree, then you search in the way you've always searched many times. So the who is using what depends also on the circumstance and what exactly is being looked for. I think equally important than this slide is this slide. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Wattpad. I very much recommend anybody who's interested in the overall literature scene to check that out. So this is a book that Hey Guys 77 wrote, How to Publish Love. So this is kind of a self-publication platform for for teenagers and young adults. And now Hey Guys 77 has written a book that has been looked at 6 million times and liked like 280,000 times. I think there are many like regular or traditional books in the market that can only dream about these numbers. Why do I show this? Because I want to show how actually the generation who grows up with these tools to publish and to read manage the environment of books. So the first thing is, I'm sorry, it's in German, but you see abgeschlossene Anziehung Boss, you might understand. So these are not the traditional genres like thriller or I don't know, educational. These are tags. It's like young adults searching for love on the beach. So this is a completely different way of categorizing books and searching them. And this is something I think it's, by the way, the same in video on demand and other collections, or if you go to music, you of course have the same movement that traditional categories and classifications don't work anymore. They're more content driven. And of course, by the way, these classifications are also created by AI. Also, what you don't see prominently is a place where you can type. So all of this works through clicking through a website. So to arrive at this book, I didn't type a single paragraph. So either you click or you talk to an app and you don't write anymore. Also because, of course, we're on mobile phones, and even if many by now are very capable of typing vast amounts of texts with just one finger at incredible speed, I think it's still quicker to click or to just talk to an app. That's important if you think of the search bar that we all use. So also, of course, it's personalized. They include friends' recommendations, and they socialize around the books they love. Also a function that I don't think as very popular in libraries so far. And it's an app, so the world is mobile by now, and so desktop becomes less and less popular, and we should look more and more for solutions that work through mobile devices. So this is the status of what's happening sort of out there. But let's compare it to where we are with libraries right now. So what I did was, this was very funny. I looked at three random library websites in two different countries, copied the links into ChatGPT, and because, of course, I didn't want to kind of call out anyone, I said GPT, okay, combine these three library websites and make a library website that follows them in style. And this is obviously what is kind of the average look of an average library website out there. So as you can see, it's rather basic. And as you can hear, I'm in a small village in the Alps, and I'll close the windows. All right, and I'm back. So, so this is kind of a rather, let's say, a neutral design. But this is not only true for websites. If you think of chatbots, like the chatbots actually we operate, now comes the kind of chapter on self-criticism. When I started working with computers in the 90s, I think, was it the 90s? I think it was the Atari ST, so we typed. And we were very relieved when the Windows came around, so we could click around the computer. And then Apple arrived, and we all started to swipe. Now with ChatGPT, I'm typing all day, so I'm kind of back to where we began. Of course, this also shouldn't be the solution for the future that we are talking about. So what can be done about it? I designed a couple of steps that lead you to possible futures. Some of them are already there for some, and some are kind of in the very distant future for the reasons we are going to talk about. One step at a time. So I'll share my screen for the first time. Let me check where my browser is. My browser is here. So this is a bookshop in Berlin that actually also started very early with artificial intelligence. So you can see here next to the search bar, which we all know, there's a button for artificial intelligence that opens the chatbot. This is interesting to show because they also started with a chatbot here at the bottom right, but they also realized that probably there's too much of memories of chatbots that have been there like for 15 years and that nobody used. So they put the chatbot where it belongs, especially if you use chatbots for recommendation or for research, next to the search bar. So that's a small step. It's a strategic decision, but I think personally, I think this is where it belongs. Okay, so next step, back to my presentation. What else can we do? Okay, so what I'm going to show you now is taking, so it's not live, it's a prototype, but it's in parts, I have to say, our vision of how a chatbot looks like. So don't be afraid. We kind of threw everything that we think could be made in there, not everything, and I'll show you what is possible due to data protection concerns, also due to just practical implication concerns. But the totality of it, I think, reflects very well of what is possible and to a certain extent, in our view, should be done with AI and chatbots in the future. All right, so let's go back to the browser. Let's move away the so this is the same, let's say, artificial library website that I made. Bottom right is the traditional place of chatbots. I moved it or copied it to next to the search bar where I think it belongs. And I'm opening the chat window. By the way, there also we have, for example, partners in Montevideo. They use the whole page for it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a small kind of botty thing on the right. So I made a nice compromise here. And let me talk you through it. As I said, I mean, this is operational on a prototype stage, and not everything is desirable on here for everybody. But I think these are a lot of discussion points that need to be addressed. So I'll start at the top here. There's a clock, and the clock is the list of books that have been borrowed. So that has two things. First of all, of course, as a user, I don't want recommendations on books that I already researched or that I already borrowed, but I want books that are new to me. So there's a list of things that I've already had. Of course, we can, with the consent of the user, already take this list and design the research answers and the recommendations in the library bot around the interests in the books that have already, or other media films that have already been used by this particular user. So, of course, especially coming from Europe, there are data protection concerns that I think can be mitigated. For example, what is possible is to have kind of a personal app that is owned by the user that contains interests, borrow history, and only upon the consent of the user it can be fed into the answer of the bot. So it's not held by the library, but by the user, him or herself. But as I said, these are discussion points. But I think if you think about Wattpad, or if you think about what you buy on Amazon or what Netflix recommends to you, I think also libraries and museums and especially research institutions should provide the user with the knowledge about what interests are, what the research questions were last week, and design the answers around this knowledge. So that's the first thing. Of course, it's a huge topic, especially with data protection. But as I said, this is the vision. This is the direction in which we want to work ourselves. It's in other countries, actually, by the way, coming from Germany, we're also talking with people outside the European Union. Our data protection concerns are alien to other parts of the world. So I think history belongs in there if the law allows. Next, so I'm not typing anything here. I'm just having here like a number of self-explaining categories. So for example, you can, of course, have what do my friends recommend. So Anna's Feel Good is a man called O by Fredrik Backman, which I don't know. And Milan has Quality of Land by Mark Uferkin and Carsten Duse, which I actually do know. It's also a Netflix television series, which is quite cool. So Milan, I join Milan's taste. But of course, what I also think is interesting is what the librarians have for me in store for me. So, for example, there is a section Classics Rediscovered that was published last week by the librarians and Science That Amazes. By the way, as a librarian, you could design like 50 categories, 50 recommendation lists, and then only the recommendation lists that fit to this particular user profile will be shown. But of course, which is also something that you can do, surprise me. So what you can do is to ask the AI to take, the history of books that have been read, also of films that have been seen, make an analysis of the behavior and recommend books based on this behavior. It's pretty much the same as if you go to Amazon and buy, I don't know. Sorry, I'm an IT guy. Buy a computer and it recommends to you the type of computer that you like. So there's no surprise there in that sense. So this is how you, and by the way, of course, all these categories can be have been developed for me by the AI. So it's nothing that needs to be configured manually or anything. Of course, if a librarian designs a list, that's librarian work. Or of course, you can do service questions. How do I get a library card? Here's the answer. Or what are the opening hours? Here are the opening hours. All that can be, so the most popular service questions can also be put there. Next thing, so I like the Martian. So of course, here are the categories of the Martian that can also be clicked. So if there's survival, that becomes a new question, but that's the only book in the survival category that we already have. You can have an AI analysis that explains you why the AI thinks this is a perfect match for you. You can have here, this is where the book actually is. So the availability, that actually is, for example, possible. It's not so much in the future if you have the availability through an API. And now comes the agentic part. So if you have an agent, I'll come to that later in the webinar, you can already borrow the book if it's not available because the quota of ebooks was out or the physical book was already borrowed, then you can say, borrow this book for me. And then if it's an ebook, for example, it can be automatically put into the account once it's available. This is agentic AI. I'll talk about it a little bit later. But of course, you can also, provide similar books, or it's actually my favorite category as a generalist, provide me as inspiration. So could be, what kind of music would fit to a book about Mars, disco fever of the 70s. Actually, I think this is quite smart because, this is when the big hype around space was going on. And of course, the film, The Martian was filmed with, I think, with Damon. So all these things are possible. And I think if this is the case, you get users to really engage with what you have on offer as a university library in terms of research is a little bit less, but of course you can design also categories and recommendations about research in this clickable way. All right, so that is that. Let me turn back. By the way, if you have questions, if you have remarks, shoot them in the chat or use the questionnaire at the end. As I said, so these are a number of topics that pretty much each of them requires an own webinar. But these are the possibilities that you have beyond, let's say, the kind of neutral things that we're offering now. All right, let's be a bit more practical and let's say short term, because as I said in the beginning, we follow the assumed expectations of our users, and the assumed expectations is practically Google. So what you have seen before is the Wattpad version of what we can do, and this is the kind of Google version of what we can do. And also here, I want to show you, this is actually a bit beyond prototype already. So the idea is that we combine search, that we combine AI and a classical search. And it looks like no, I'm not stuck anymore. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. And let me go to my browser. Let me move this around. So what we did was we took all the law books of the Library of Congress, or at least the Mark 21 data of all the law books of the Library of Congress. And we put them together with a search engine. And this is what came out. So of course I could type something, but I could also kind of click on these suggestions. And what you see now happening here is, so this comes from our chatbot. So we threw all the books, all the metadata of these books into our chatbot, which then created this AI overview on this question, answer for immigration and immigration law in China. Looks like here are some relevant catalog records that you might consider. Freedom of immigration of Chinese citizens. Sounds about right. Immigration and foreign travel in communist China also sounds about right. So the chatbot provides a beautiful answer, can be useful, but of course, we also have the classical search result list below, which I then can sort by, I don't know, A to Z, or by relevance. And of course, here are the filters, I don't know, divorce, published by publisher, and of course, by collections. Now I have only the Library of Congress law report. There could be other collections as well that we import here. The thing is, so I stay with the answer on China, and I click this here, and through the chat that was recommended me this Chinese book, I can go back to the result list of the search. So both search and chatbot are integrated and can work hand in hand together. However, so this is kind of cool, even though, as you have just seen, it's just in testing and prototype stage. The only the real problem here is that if you are a large library and you have a great number of users, which I hope, then and you attach an AI answer to every single search request that you have, the costs will run away because if you might remember that actually the tokens that are used by the AI have to be paid to the OpenAIs and Googles of this world. So what we did was, oops, sorry, that is already the next one. We created a router, so basically, which is kind of a second bot, which uses a very lightweight model and cheap model, of course. And the router then decides whether this is a search question, an AI question, or it's not sure, and then kind of it takes the two. So if it's a search question like a known item search about a title, it will just return a search result and not kind of throw on the machine of AI. If it's like really, I'm searching for something that tells me about, I don't know, the future of AI in libraries, then maybe you should ask the AI because that's not a very specific question and it's more about making sense out of this question. And if you're not sure, as a chatbot, as an AI, you just provide both. And that works actually quite well. You can, of course, if you have very important questions, for example, if you're not only a library, but also if the library is integrated in the overall university framework, and it's about webinars, seminars, or tests that you have make, you can also add a deterministic workflow that always provides the answers that you wanted to give. So this is the prototype thing. Of course, the next step would be, or another step, another way to integrate this would be not to build this anew, but actually to integrate it into existing services like Refind or Koha. So on the right, our partner, the Berlin Libraries, you can see, let's say, one of the tests that we have made on how to get the chatbot on the right into the Koha results list on the left. But as you can see, this so technically, by the way, this is not really difficult. So you can combine the two very easily. You can also say, okay, I do a hybrid search and do the two simultaneously. I think here the problem is also very nicely exemplified by the screenshot is the UI. So how do you present this to the user? And I think, as you know, many participants in the AI world actually think, and I agree with that. The main issue with AI is not the technology of the LLMs. The main issue is how you design interfaces between technology and humans, that humans can use the AI in a natural way. It kind of also comes out with a joke I presented you in the beginning when, typing chatbot. I mean, if you think about it, you type 90s style or even 80s style with a technology of the 21st century, and that's not cool. And it's also not cool to have kind of Refined and AI next to each other. We have to come up with a very smart interface to merge the two that is easy to use and easy to understand and self-explaining for our users. So, as I said, the integration itself is not so super difficult. I think what is more of a challenge, also of human brain, is how to merge that visually in the front end. All right, next thing, I just want to mention it and I want to skip it because this is really a webinar topic. Especially important, less important for public libraries, very important for university libraries, and of course for archives and museums. So to not only have Mark 21 data and talk about about books, but to talk with the books, so with the content itself, with the whole book. So for public libraries, it's not really an issue because I think borrowing and recommending books is their core interest and also what users come to. But if you're a researcher, of course, it's much better if you can quickly access the content of the source rather than having a recommendation and then have to look for the source. However, and this is why I just want to kind of rush through this. This is not even a technology question. Of course, there are questions of, how to quote the works, how to lead to the source, whether it's just to the book or the page of the book or the part of the page of the book that the AI used to generate the answer. And of course, it's also about the size of the context, so the amount of the sheer data. But I think the core of talking with content is with the sources themselves is actually a copyright issue, and also kind of a commercial issue because, as you know, the large publishing houses like Elsevier, they all create their own chatbots, and for me, it is very interesting to see how this evolves, because of course not libraries don't really like to acquire like 50 different chatbots depending on what kind of content they want to allow the students to use. So this is kind of a business model that is still evolving. I mean, this comes from, let's say, a bot that we built together with the publishers, which allows very interesting use cases because, of course, we took the books and we had Augustinus and Martin Luther discuss theological issues based on the contents of these books. So we had a little battle, religious battle going on. But of course, this is just is fun, but doesn't solve the copyright issue. If you, of course, are an archive and you own the rights, or a museum and you own the rights to the publications, that's a whole different story. Then, of course, talking to the source is just amazing and great. We had the whole the whole digitized publications of the Hanauer Zeitung, which is a city near Frankfurt from 1804 to 1941. And of course, you can just talk with these newspaper articles from, I don't know, 100 years ago and ask what happened on your birthday in 1804. So that's really depends, but I want to rush through it. If there's any interest in talking about this, I'd be happy to do really a webinar about that. Last thing, or maybe even first thing, is we regularly hear that we don't know enough about AI to decide, and how much time does it take to set it up, and how much time does it take to make it appropriate for our purpose. So I think, I mean, you have to learn about AI. This is why you're actually here and listen to me. But of course, you have the best way to learn is always to use it. And probably most of you do in your everyday life, but also to use it in the library context. So what we did was we created, which is in open beta right now, and we will publish probably as open source, which is a prompting sharing platform, and I'll show you that in a second. So what we have here, these are actually the prompts that we use every day, sorted by topic. So these are all prompts that we designed, and funny. So there's a library that doesn't allow emojis. So the prompt to not allow emojis is never use emojis. And there's another library, a children library, and you're talking to children. You make free use of emoticons to make the conversation friendly and engaging. Okay, so and then I can click here and say, okay, I want emoticons because I want to be friendly and engaging. And then you see this prompt appearing here on the right. And then I think the linking and the output is also important. I take this is a Koha library, so I can use this as an example, and of course rework it according to our linking and function calls. And I want to have date and time always current, so I use this, and then I can export it as text and put in the backend. And I have all the prompts that I need ready for my own platform. And there's, of course, a dashboard where you can discuss these questions and download manuals and share manuals and stuff. So this is how I think collaboration and learning about AI can look like in the future. All right, so these are just very practical steps on how to approach AI in the future. I'm returning to my presentation, and now comes the crystal ball part. So this is vision, but let's say it's a vision based in facts. And and I want to focus on two things. But before I start the vision part, I want to deal with the concerns about the future. So what are the typical concerns? The typical concerns, especially in Europe, is data protection. But let's say the experience shows that the rules will follow the developments. If you're not European, in Europe, sometimes the rules precede the developments or hinder developments. But in general, this is kind of a balance will be found there in due time. Of course, one of the big issues is misuse of copyrighted material. But here, I think it's the same as with data protection. If you look at the 18th century, there wasn't any copyright at all. And then in the 19th century, they discovered that it might be a good idea because, of course, if you have copyrighted material, you can also make a business case out of it, which in the end promotes the creation of copyrighted material. So also this will just eventually balance it out. I think a very serious concern is energy consumption because AI uses an incredible amount of energy. However, the efficiency will increase because the energy consumption is the main cost driver for the operators, and they do everything to drive the energy consumption down. And I think in the future we'll see a very significant decrease in energy consumption. Please remember, I think I make this quote a lot of times, but for anybody who remembers the first days of the internet, it took like, I don't know, 10 years to arrive at the 56K modem that, when you created a connection with the internet, made bing, bing, bing. And if you were lucky, you were connected to the internet. And that took, I don't know, at least a decade. Here we are like 2 years into at least the public part of this technology. I mean, AI, of course, is older, but the ChatGPT world is like 2.5 years old. So we are in very early stages. And I think efficiency will increase, and also the problem of hallucinations, which has also greatly decreased in the last year, which actually has not and doesn't have any effect on, for example, recommendations, because we always route the recommendations and links to the actual source. I think all these problems will decrease or be gone totally. I think that there are other issues really that merit concern, and for example, corporate preference. The people who follow AI may have heard that 2 weeks ago the US government didn't allow Anthropic to publish the newest models to the overall world, and Anthropic reacted by providing the newest models just to a selected few companies, which I think is really concerning because it basically provides the companies that already lead the market, the tech kings, so to speak, with a competitive advantage over the other companies who cannot use the latest models. And I think this will further strengthen the companies that are already, to a certain extent, ruling at least the digital world. And of course, you have countries like China who keep a very close eye on the models that are produced. By the way, same for the US. We shouldn't assume that the US is not, or the US officials are not able to look into every single chat that we exchange with ChatGPT or with Google. And of course, it is used for weapons. So it's really a part of geopolitics. So these are, I think, very, very legitimate concerns. And I think there has to be a political will also to rein all this in. The second thing is, which also actually very practically affects you who use AI, is that AI develops incredibly fast. And that keeping up with this development costs time, people, and money. So many universities, at least half a dozen that I know, have created chatbots, by using the free work of master students who then, as part of the master thesis, provided the chatbot to the university, which is great if this is a starting point to learn about AI, but which, of course, is far from being a long-term use. because of course it has to be maintained. And it has to be maintained all the time. Last week we have a new family of models by ChatGPT. They need to be updated. Or another, I don't know, LLM provider comes around. So all of this needs to be updated and maintained. And this is a serious amount of work and cost. And the last thing, which is actually my biggest concern, is it's my term for it, Draculae, which is the thing is AI is not creating knowledge. AI, searched and crawled the whole internet to get knowledge and then used it to provide his answers, but it's not creating any new knowledge. It uses Wikipedia. It uses all the websites that provide knowledge to kind of resurgerate it, to kind of rearrange it, but it doesn't create any knowledge. So in the future, if Wikipedia isn't used anymore because everybody runs to AI, who's creating the knowledge that the AI basically stole from Wikipedia? So how's the new knowledge world going to look like if basically if AI is just using what's already there and not creating anything new? Who's creating something new? So I think this is a very unsolved problem. And if you read or watch videos around AI, it's already a problem because the big AI companies don't even know what to train the models with anymore because all the content that's free available is already used. So that's a question that has to be solved in the future. How can we contribute? Looking at the time, I'll go quickly through that. So what's the strength of libraries? I think libraries, of course, it's my personal opinion, are a bit too shy to engage in this I think exciting new world. So the first thing is libraries have knowledge about the media that they hold, most about books, about journals, about films, about music. There's a lot of knowledge that is in libraries. And that can be used to consult, to recommend, to provide, for example, this librarian recommendation list that I showed you in the chatbot. Also to provide context or to, for example, create categories of books that are related because authors copied from each other. This is all knowledge that librarians can contribute. Especially because, and that's my second bullet point, libraries don't really have a commercial interest. They are not driven by sales numbers of books. So what they can contribute basically has a certain degree of trust by anybody because it's kind of an official educated opinion. And of course, I think it doesn't help if this trust and this knowledge just remains in the library. It should participate in the knowledge society of today. And also, I think it would be great if the libraries have, let's say, educated access to AI that lies all the concerns that I just described open and educates users about AI instead of just letting them use whatever is out there and easy. And of course, libraries have, to a certain extent, access to the sources. In the end, everybody knows, even the most ardent users of AI, that AI is a probability machine and something that doesn't provide 100% certain answers. It's a probable answer, not a certain answer. So in order to be sure, or in order to just touch a book physically and sensually, you have to go back to the source. For me, it's actually coming from Berlin. It's a great satisfaction that actually it's an anecdotal proof, but I had the feeling that 5 years ago everybody was looking at the phone in the subway or at a Tolino or Kindle, and the number of printed books that I see in the subway has certainly increased. And so that gives me a little bit back the belief in mankind and womankind. And so the sources remain important also in today's world. Context, anyway, I think I spoke about that with knowledge. So I think the role here of libraries is to provide quick and cheap access, by the way, social function of libraries for people who don't have the means to buy expensive cloud installations. So I think cheap access to culture through AI has also a societal impact. And this is something I think the libraries should engage with. Especially, and I think especially, of course, I talk a lot to libraries, and one of the standard answers, I think, if you talk to anybody in public administration, but also in the private sector, is that money is tight. Money is, in my experience, always tight if nobody with the power and the will to decide doesn't decide. But I think that the point is that if you want to stay relevant, you have to engage in the future, because if you lose relevance, you will also use budget. So I think AI is something that should be on. Of course, I mean, I'm biased. I'm doing AI, but still, I think it should be on everybody's agenda. All right. So that was the thing. So I wanted to talk about two visions about AI that I personally deem very important. The first thing is, and everybody who visited an earlier webinar of mine knows this, that, for example, we built a prototype for the Metropolitan Museum where we link the library data with the collection data, so that if you stand in front of a work of art, you get a recommendation for the book that is, I think, 2 stories up in the Watson Library. And being a generalist, we took this a little bit further, and I'm going to show you that. Because I think that one of the really original, real strengths of AI is to combine very diverse sets of data over a large collection of data. So if you, for example, are in a big institution and you have PDFs and Wikimedias and in all different text files and Word files and all different formats, the original power of AI is that it can read through all of them, no matter the format, and make sense of it. Which I think, if you manage the content of your organization or law firm or institution, then AI is a perfect thing to do that. A more fascinating thing than managing existing content is this. So this is kind of, you can swipe. So I use my finger, you can swipe in any direction. And if you look at the bars below, you can see that depending on the direction I swipe, the number of the percentage of books increases, or the music increases, or the art increases. So I can swipe in every direction and kind of build my own cosmos of data. And in the backend of this, we can also add design, and we can add, for example, news. And this allows us to kind of create a tapestry of all the cultural interests that we have. So, and by the way, this is real data coming from Gutenberg or from the Rijksmuseum in the Netherlands. And so if you go to one of these things in detail, you can go, so this is, as you can see, imported from the Rijksmuseum. And if I go to the source, as I said, we really think the source is important. You get to this image in the website of the Rijksmuseum, which kind of takes some time to load. And here it is. So this is the image you have just seen in my Cosmos. Cosmos is probably not the name that will remain, but I think it describes, or you go to a book, and then you can basically, it's a Gutenberg thing, you can directly download the EPUB file. And with music, you can actually, I probably cannot hear that, but you see here below here, the music start to play. So we combined free music, free books, free library collections to create a cultural cosmos that you can navigate through. That you can share with your friends, that you can publish also to show the world how smart you are. You can publish your personal collection. So this is, but I mean, from a technology point of view, combining all these data of art, of music, of design, of fashion is not a problem anymore with AI. I think this is a very unique use case that before AI was totally impossible to do. The second, and now I return to my presentation, use case that I want to show you, which is kind of a vision. This and it concerns the term that is also running through the press up and down, and which is on the agenda of every huge tech company, is agentic AI. So if you're not familiar with the term, what is agentic AI? Agentic AI is the AI making an action for you, doing something for you, instead of just providing an answer or summarizing a text. So it's very obvious, for example, let's say the example given mostly in the press is that you want to make a holiday, and you say, I want to go to Italy, and then the AI checks your calendar, checks the holidays of your children, maybe even opens WhatsApp, and designs, in my case, a very, let's say, polite questions to my wife. Are we going? What do you think about going, let's say, to Sicily? And then the design, actually, once the AI has gathered all the information, it can actually access a flight booking website and buy the flights for me and book the hotel for me according to my budget, if it has access to my bank account, which I hope it doesn't, and if it knows from previous holidays my kind of taste. So this is agentic AI. Basically, it's kind of an assistant that helps me with everyday tasks and not only informs me about something, but does something for me. And in the future, potentially reads my thoughts. I don't know. But the point is that the assistant really takes action. So what does that mean in our context? In our context, an agent could, for example, borrow a book for me that I wasn't able to borrow because it was borrowed out to someone else. And then it automatically, if it's an ebook, put it into my account once it's available, checking it every day. Or, for example, if you combine library services with campus services for a university, it can not only kind of hold my book collection for my thesis for me, but it can also, for example, book the courses that match or at least advise me on courses that match my interests or that match my research, and say, hello, here's a course that might interest you based on the research that you have already done. Shall I book you in? And then you say yes, and then it puts me on the list for that particular course. Or, which is my personal favorite because I really love museums and I spend as much time there as my children allow. And I have a particular interest, for example, in Romanesque architecture. And it happened to me kind of many times that I went to, I don't know, a bigger city like Paris or New York with a great number of museums. And I didn't even know that there was an exhibition in one or two museums that happened in that town. It would be great if I had kind of a companion who checked upfront what kind of exhibitions in my line of interests happen in that town, and then basically even provides me with a suggestion on when I have time and how much the ticket costs, and if I say okay, buys me the ticket. So this is agentic AI, and it's spooky, I have to say. But on the other hand, it will allow so many different, let's say, positives, or also helping me personally, that I think what is spooky on the one end can be very helpful at the other end. For example, I come from Germany. When Google Street View started, it was a huge wave of distrust, and we had pixeled out all the buildings. But now nobody cares about that anymore, and everybody uses it. And I think Google Street View is helpful to everybody. So this might also be the case with agentic AI. Again, I believe we have to balance data protection, as opening up our private lives to the tech kings in Silicon Valley, with the obvious advantages that these systems can have. By the way, last anecdote of this webinar, this image was generated upon my prompt by ChatGPT, and I use AI very often. Actually, I let also AI control itself. So, for example, whenever Claude says something to me, I let ChatGPT control the answer. And you might notice that also the different models have their own personality. So this is the personality of ChatGPT giving me this answer. This is the personality of Claude that created an image based on the same prompt. So if you see this and this, you can see that the differences between the personalities of the LLMs are great. But also, if you see this, you can see that a world domination by Claude is still far away. So that lets me sleep a little bit, more in comfort. And so if this still works like that, we can all be happy to a certain extent. So this was this. I think I made it in time. I have 5 more minutes to go. As I said, either you can ask stuff in the chat. I'm quickly using the chat and see what. And I can't see any questions in the chat. Good. So if you have any questions for me, you can also, as I said, you can link me on LinkedIn. You can answer in the questionnaire that will open up once I stop this webinar. And of course, you can write me and you can ask us. We're happy to talk about AI, as you know. It's something that I think is fascinating, especially also because it's pretty much unclear how it will evolve and how regulations will take place and how we would be using it. And so we're all trying to find our way through it, and we're happy to assist. We're happy to discuss, and we're happy to meet again at our next webinar. So thank you very much, and see you next time.